My name is Jason Graziani, and this is my story. I was born in Van Nuys, California, which is a part of the San Fernando Valley. We come from a working class family, three generations. On my mom's side, where men are moving furniture and women are in the office. Got my work ethic from moving furniture and being around the trucks and the warehouse and the guys. Also got a high level of sarcasm and being funny with people and kind of like you have to watch yourself and make sure that you're on guard. I'm not much of a fighter, but I do like to debate. And so I had to protect myself with words. And so we had a lot of fun with the guys on the trucks. And I always loved being around the guys. I always loved being like helping. I was usually younger than everybody else. Although I was the oldest of all my cousins, I tend to hang out with older people like my uncles, aunts, things like that. My mom was a hardworking lady and she took care of everything. She probably made some mistakes in her early life with my dad. And they divorced when I was 2 years old. And I had a immigrant father from Israel, an Italian Jew from Israel, who married my mom. And apparently they were the life of the party, dancing in the 70s and 80s in Vegas and things like that. And I don't know many of those stories, but here I am. Okay. And I was the first son. I was the oldest of the three boys that they had. And my dad was very charismatic, very charming, but chose a life of crime and went a different direction. And my mom wasn't having any of that stuff. So they divorced when I was 2. They married each other again when I was 4. They divorced each other again when I was 6. And after 7 years old, I never saw my dad. He chose to get into some bad things. My mom wasn't having that stuff, testified against him, and made sure that her boys were going to be raised with Christian values and Christian foundation. And I remember my mom being a tough mom, never abusive, but I always thought it was possible. I always thought at any time my mom could handle me, but I wanted to make sure to please my mom. I wanted to make sure to honor my mom, and I know that my mom carried guilt in her life about whether do I keep the father in the life of the children, even though he's a wrong person and a bad guy, or do I keep him around and honor the father, but my kids could end up being, like him. And so I really spent a lot of my life trying to validate my mom's decision that we were better off going broke, going hungry, going, just really not having anything. And I remember we were on welfare, food stamps in a period of time in our life. I'll more on that in a minute, but my mom really wanted us to have a foundation of a few things. And I remember 3 things in my mind. Maybe like you, maybe you hear stories of things that your parents said, or you remember parts of your childhood, and maybe it wasn't even exactly the way that it was, but it's the way you remember it. The way I remember it, because there's some dark stages and some kind of blackout periods of my life, but the way I remember it was my mom would say things like, look, you're going to love Jesus, you're going to respect women, and you're going to retire your mother. And I remember that last part, there would always be, and every time we would be taught something serious, there was always some element of humor or sarcasm or something funny at the end. But it was like you didn't know that it was supposed to be humorous or funny. It wasn't funny. It may have been said with a funny tone, but she was serious. And so I took that very seriously. And I remember that as early as 7 or 8 years old, saying I have to love Jesus and I need to respect women and I need to retire my mother. And she would make sure legally. And I didn't even really understand what retiring your mom meant. I didn't understand legally. I didn't understand some of these phrases. And the walk with God was unique. My mom was a non-practicing Catholic. My dad was a practicing Jew, and so growing up in the San Fernando Valley, there's parts that are heavily Middle Eastern, and there's you could go to Hebrew school, or you could go to this school or that school, and because they married, divorced, married, divorced, it was like revolutionary each time. Meaning my schools changed, felt like my religion changed, it felt like my ethnicity changed. My mom is a white blonde lady. My dad was a dark skinned gentleman, and many people thought that my dad was African American. In fact, this is a horrible reference, but my mom and dad, they were like OJ and Nicole. That's what they look like, and that's what I saw. And sometimes people cringe a little bit when I say that, but this is just raw, and this is just what it is. And my dad was a boxer, and he was very much in shape, and he handled his business, but that side of the family I really wasn't raised on. And so for a little while I went to Hebrew school, but then I ended up in public schools in Los Angeles, and I remember just feeling like I didn't belong. I was scared of school. I had a lot of anxiety. I had a broken home, a lot of frustrations. There was violence in our home. We saw a lot of ugly things growing up. Use your imagination, but but I didn't want to be in a divided area, and I didn't want that at all. And I remember seeing gang violence in schools. I remember seeing people getting stabbed or even shot in schools, and I was scared to go to school. I was really scared, and I remember being spoken to in even being in classes where it was primarily Spanish speaking, and I didn't really understand anything, and I didn't fit in. But I was pretty good at school because it was more of like a defensive mechanism to my life. Like, hey, I'm not really advancing over here socially, but I could withdraw and I could be introverted and I could get into my notes and I could get into my studies. And maybe the way some people talk about being an athlete, they turn to the field, or maybe some people turn to music, or maybe some people turn to other habits, or good or bad. I turned to just wanting to be a great student. And I remembered that when I would get a report card, that would please my mom. And I remember that my mom would brag and be like, "Hey, my son got straight A's." And I wanted that to continue. I wanted that to continue. I wanted when my mom would talk about me to her friends, I felt like I was validating her decisions in her life by my performance in my life. And that was a big motivator growing up. And so I wanted to make my mom proud. And I was a self-proclaimed mama's boy. And I had two younger brothers, Josh and Jeremy, who I love deeply. And so Josh was more of my like brother growing up because we were about a year and a half apart. Jeremy, although he was 5 years younger, it was almost like I was a little bit more of a father figure to him. And just that 5 years, although that's still pretty close with siblings, that was a big gap for us because it just felt like it was a long 5 years. And I had seen things and gone through things that maybe my brothers didn't go through, so that gave me a different connection to my mom. But I felt like I had to be the protector. I felt like I wanted to be the provider. My mom never remarried. And so, anyways, we after my dad was gone, my mom worked 8 to 5 in the daytime for our moving company. And then she worked 6 to 10 at night, usually doing massage therapy. And she was always looking to make additional income because we just didn't have a lot. We never felt like we were poor, and I don't think that we were poor. We just had very little. And single mom with 3 kids in Southern California was a tough upbringing. But I remember Friday nights and getting Domino's pizza, and I remember my mom giving me $22 because that would cover the pizza at $16 plus tax plus a tip. And I was learning how taxes worked. I learned how tips worked. My mom would send me to Blockbuster Video on my bicycle. And just getting 2 movies was amazing. But because we always had to work, I didn't get to go early enough. And so none of the movies would be there at the end. And I was always frustrated. And I never got new Nikes, but I wanted Nikes. I was a Michael Jordan kid, and I was a Michael Jackson kid, and I would be raised by these VHSs being put. This is a VCR for the younger community out there. It would be put inside the TV, and I would just stare at the TV. I would just stare at the TV, and I would love watching Michael Jordan play basketball, and I would love watching Michael Jackson dancing, and they were performers, and they were bright, and they were vibrant, and everybody watched them, and I was just enthralled by watching this stuff. So I loved music and I loved sports, but I wasn't good at either one of them. I wanted to be good at basketball. I would love to sing and dance, but I don't have those skill sets. I stuck to just talking. And but for a long time in my life, I didn't talk. I was really shy, scared, introverted. There was days I didn't want to go to school. I was just nervous all the time, feeling anxiety in your stomach before you even knew what anxiety was. Man, I was feeling anxiety before I even knew what anxiety was. And so when people would start to describe those feelings, it really resonated with me. And so finally, after a few years, my mom was able to, she found a local Lutheran chapel, Bethel Lutheran Church. But it was a school. It was Bethel Lutheran School. And we had no Lutheran ties, but it had a program where they would give a discount to my mom for putting 3 kids into the school. And so all of a sudden my life changed because it just seemed like it was more rooted. I had more access to my teachers. I still remember Mrs. Good in 3rd grade. I still remember my 4th grade teacher. I remember Mrs. Fox in 5th grade. I remember my 3rd, 4th, 5th, and I started to shine a little bit more and get a little bit brighter, make friends for the first time. And I felt like my life was really starting to become normal. And then my mom became permanently disabled. And it was an accident, a freak accident at a hospital. My mom was an athlete, a former athlete, and she was going in for a knee surgery. And I remember they put a shot in the early 90s, they put a shot in my mom's back. And I was about 10, 11, 12 years old. And they put a shot in my mom's back. And that shot, the needle was infected. And it left my mom permanently disabled because she immediately somehow got a spinal infection, and that spinal infection started eating away the cartilage so that my mom's spine would be bone on bone. And little by little, my mom's just physical abilities just went away. She immediately couldn't work anymore. And that was a really tough situation because we ran a moving and storage business for 3 generations. And I appreciate the help that my uncles and aunts gave us. And I appreciate the help that my grandma and grandpa at the time gave us. But my grandma died right around the same time. And my uncle died in a car accident at the same time, driving one of the family trucks. And it just seemed like it was like a death in the family, a death in the family, and then your mom's disabled and your dad's gone. And moving furniture is a cash business. You know, you don't really have 401ks, you don't have equity in homes and everything. And so that was really tough. And I remember seeing my mom struggle. And in the movies, you may have a lawsuit and make millions of dollars and, you know, medical malpractice and all these things. But in the real world, I learned a lesson that if you don't have money to defend yourself, you probably can't go sue a hospital. You probably can't go through that process. And so I was a little resentful, maybe a lot more than I'm letting on. I was bitter and I was frustrated, and I felt like, well, my dad's gone, my mom's sick, my grandma just passed away, and I felt like around 12, 13 years old, I had to grow up very fast. And I did. And all I knew how to do was perform in the classroom. And so I continued to get good grades and do that part. Work as early as I can, whether it was stapling and doing paperwork or going and helping to sweep out the warehouse or anything that I could do to work, I was doing. The outlet mall opened near us in Camarillo, California, where we had moved to right before my mom's disability. And it felt like just when our life was getting consistent, just when our life was starting to move forward, it was like bam. And that's the way life works. And it's never when you're ready, but you learn and you adapt and you're forced to learn something. And so I did my best. And I remember I appreciate Monica over at City National and at the bank, and she really helped me do the banking and taught me really how to run my family's finances. And I remember one day when my mom was like, Jason, I can't do it anymore. I quit. And I never heard my mom quit at anything. I never heard my mom stop or complain or make excuses, but she was just had a morphine pump in her stomach. She was on Vicodin pills every day. It was just constant pain. And there was days where I didn't even know if my mom knew I was even home. And so I was unsupervised, and I really ran the household at a young age. And I felt like I have to take care of my brothers. I have to get good grades. I have to go work. And I remember coming home, and it was 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and I had just gotten, so I had school till 3. Then I'd work at the outlet mall at Hush Puppy Shoes, selling shoes. I remember doing that, and I remember working all over the place. And then my brothers followed, and they were working at pizza joints. They were working everywhere that we could work. We were just working. Anything that we could do to contribute to the family. And I remember I'd get home, and I felt like life wasn't fair. That the other kids that had good grades, they got to go start their homework at 4 o'clock or right after their sports got out, and I had to go start my homework at 9:30 because I had to work. And I was like, Mom, this isn't fair. And I remember my mom just saying, like, nobody wants to hear you cry, nobody wants to hear you complain. And she would go to the kitchen and she would make a pot of coffee. And so, you know, this is where like my love of coffee started, because coffee wasn't just, this is not even about caffeine, although my mom may have thought it was about caffeine. It was really a nostalgic feeling. I love drinking coffee, and it always made me feel better. And so my mom would make me a big pot of coffee, and she'd say, listen, I'm going to bed, but you go finish your homework, and nobody wants to hear you cry about you not sleeping or whatever. And my mom never told me you were supposed to sleep 8 hours. She never said these things to me, and she just kind of expected me to go get my work done and do it. And I remember we had this little CD player, and I remember a CD, Third Eye Blind. I remember putting that on a lot, and I would just listen to it all the way through. And sometimes I would feel sad, sometimes I would cry, sometimes I would be frustrated, but I would continue to do my work. And then the bus picked up at 6:40 a.m. and I would have to be at the bus at 6:40 a.m. And I remember getting there, and I remember being nervous because sometimes I got bullied by some people, big football players, on the way to the bus stop and the way back. And I remember wanting to play football just to kind of face these bullies. And I did. I played football my junior year. I never even played one play. I got like one garbage play my entire year. And for those of you that were on the Rio Mesa Spartans, I appreciate you if you're watching this. And I didn't even really enjoy the football process. I love football, but I really just wanted to stick that out so that those guys never thought that they could get over on me ever again. Then maybe they probably don't even know that that was the reason that motivated me, but it did remind me from Kevin, Jerome, you know, some of you guys. And I just want you to know that I appreciate you, because guess what happened? We became friends afterwards. We became friends. And sometimes you have to face your bullies. Sometimes you have to show up, maybe when you don't feel like it. And I don't want to ever go through that process again. And I don't want to do that part again. But I'm glad that that happened because it started getting me confident. I started raising my confidence that, hey, if I could perform in a classroom, I was never good at football, but my senior year, I got to start those 10 games. And I felt like, okay, cool. Maybe I could do something in my life. Maybe I could be somebody. And I grew up on Ronald Reagan. I loved the conservative speaking. I loved Rush Limbaugh. I was a Rush Limbaugh baby. And I remember wanting to, like, man, maybe I could be in politics, or maybe I'll be a president, or maybe I'll be a corporate lawyer. And so my mom would cry about money a lot, and my dream was to go to Stanford Law School. I don't talk about that part a lot because I never applied to Stanford because it would require that I would leave Southern California to go to Northern California and be away from my mom. And she was going through a lot of surgeries at that time. So long story short, she said get good grades, go to a good school, and get a good job. And that's what a lot of uneducated parents say. They say get good grades, go to a good school, and get a good job. But I've never even seen what a good job is. I believe in working, and I believe in being employed, and I believe in being happy wherever you are, but I don't know what's considered a good job. Does that mean income? Does that mean benefits? Does that mean happiness? I don't know. People would just say that. So I went to the University of Southern California, USC, Fight on Trojans, and that was an amazing experience. And I really believe that if I graduated USC and I was class of '04, I remember thinking that I'd be rich, that I'd be successful, that I would go work at a big company. And I worked in Fortune 500 for just a couple years, and I appreciated my opportunity. Howard Jacobson, Tony Rosbeck, thank you so much over giving me a shot at Cintas Corporation. Learned work ethic, continued from moving furniture, and took that into that environment. But that wasn't for me. I got invited to a sales meeting for an insurance organization, and I saw Mr. Milet speak. And I remember being at a big event. It's called a big event, and it was 2005. And I remember getting started and coming home, and I told my mom, "Hey, I'm gonna do like insurance sales, annuities, and life insurance, and I don't know. They recruit and they build teams and something like that, and I don't really know how this works." And my mom's like, "Okay, but don't quit your job. Don't quit your job." Yeah, 8, 9 months later, I quit my job. I went full time. I don't even know what I was doing, but I believed in the vision. I believed in the vision. I believed in being an entrepreneur, and I believed in building my own business, and I believed in being my own boss, even though you go through this whole process of learning and everything. And then I met Patrick Bet David, and that was such an amazing experience meeting Patrick. And then he started an organization. I remember going over to that organization and doing some amazing things and building something great. And we believe in helping people and changing lives. And really what that's led to over till today. I now live in Dallas, Texas, and we had an opportunity with our business to come to Dallas. And I met my beautiful wife, Natalie. And I just thank Natalie so much for everything that she's done for me. Natalie's from Mexico. At the time, she was a single mom. I met Crystal when she was 10. I met Nathan when he was 7. Nathan is a special boy, and so he can't swallow, he can't speak, he can't walk, he can't do so many different things, and he's in a wheelchair, and it's a very difficult situation. But that really humbles you and it centers you. Being a father of a daughter centers you, and I appreciate the opportunity that Crystal accepted me as her dad, and I got a chance to raise a young girl, and now she's an adult. And now I've got my two own little ones. We have two other little daughters right now, and that's an amazing experience. And so God is a humorous God, and He's like, "Hey, Jason, I'm going to put you in the lives of girls, okay?" And so my mom has passed away since, and Natalie's father has passed away since, and so I have my mother-in-law in the house, and I've got my two little girls, and we run our organization EIB Excellence in Building, and we run that team in insurance, and we also work on our Leader for Life brand. We work on our Leader for Life brand, and I could tell you something that it's special because God captured my heart. I've always believed in God, but I've never walked with the Holy Spirit, and we'll have more content on that in the future. But the Holy Spirit just caught my heart. I didn't understand. I thought the stories in the Bible were of the past that would teach us something for the future, but I didn't understand that Christ can live in me. And met my pastor Randy Moore at Revolution Church, and I've learned so much, and I'm still a child. I'm still a child of God. I'm still learning. I'm still learning in business. We've had a lot of successes. We've done some really good things, but we just think we're just getting started. The United States of America right now needs more God present, and people need to accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior to go out there and do something big. There's too many males that are passive. and they're not acting like men the way God created them to be. Men, you are called to be men. You are not called to be males. You're not called to be, just kind of float through society. You're really called to lead. But I think that the devil's got a grip in a lot of people and making people more passive, causing people to have depression, anxiety, frustrations, ugly things. Marriages are falling apart. People don't even want to get married. People don't know how to parent. People don't really stand for something today as much. They complain, they talk smack, they hide behind their devices and say things, but they don't go out there and really seek to help and glorify the kingdom of God and really help our country, the United States of America, be the best country it could be. Fall in love with somebody, be married, stay married, raise children, go out there and build businesses, help other people so that you could become a millionaire too. And so many different things that are taking place. And so, what does the future hold for us? My wife and I are serious about glorifying the kingdom of God and helping people learn how Jesus lives in them and how to be successful in that. And personally, I love helping young guys become men and really teaching that foundation. I want to help people get married and not just get married, but stay married. I want to help people become better parents and really add to society and add to the community. Let's not blame the president for everything, whether you're blaming, Donald Trump or Joe Biden or whoever it is. Have an opinion on the issues, have an opinion. People won't follow you unless you have an opinion. But at the same time, you're going to have to root your convictions there and you're going to have to stand for something and you're going to have to hang out with people that you don't always like or that you don't agree with, but you have to show mutual respect with these individuals because we're all God's children. And I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to grow these platforms. I'm excited to teach, educate, help, and inspire the next generation of leaders in the United States of America and throughout the world. And I hope that you join us in that process. Can't wait to get to know you. And thank you for hearing my story today. I'm Jason Graziani, and I hope you choose to be a leader for life.